The boy on the bus. Every morning, Laura took the 7:15 bus. It had become such a routine that nothing about it surprised her anymore. She was used to the ride, the rushed movement of the passengers, the familiar faces, and the strange silence that seemed to dominate the space inside the bus. But there was something about that boy she just couldn't ignore. He was always there. At the back of the bus, leaning against the window, headphones in, lost in a world no one else could reach. His distant gaze, his anguished features, and his withdrawn posture stirred a silent curiosity in her. She had never heard him speak, but there was something in his eyes that looked like a cry for help, as if he were searching for something or someone. At first, Laura was content just watching him from afar, thinking he would be just another stranger in her routine. But as the weeks passed, she started to notice that the boy began appearing more and more in her thoughts. There was something about him that caught her attention, something she couldn't explain. Maybe it was his loneliness, the mystery surrounding him, or that quiet melancholy that seemed to radiate from his body. He seemed so different from everyone else, so isolated, that Laura could no longer pretend he wasn't there. And then one day, she decided to act. She decided to speak to him, start a conversation, if he wanted to talk. Even if it was something small, something simple, she felt she needed to know more. What she didn't know was that this simple gesture would change both of their lives forever. She had no idea that the boy on the bus, so quiet and distant, held secrets that would transform their paths in ways she could never imagine. He was so much more than just another passenger, and Laura was about to find that out in the most surprising way possible. This may look like an ordinary story, but trust me, it's anything but. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful stories. Now let's begin. Chapter 1. The Unexpected Encounter. Laura had always been an observant person. During her daily bus rides, she liked to lose herself in her own thoughts, noticing the little things around her, the hushed conversations, the tired faces of people heading to work, the hurried eyes of those desperate to escape the claustrophobic space. But there was one person who intrigued her. Almost like a mystery she felt the need to solve. The boy, as she called him in her mind, was different. He didn't take part in those conversations, didn't blend in with the other passengers. Always isolated, he stayed in the same corner, headphones in, face serious, expression lost. Sometimes Laura would try to observe his hands, wondering what he might be doing, but he never seemed to notice anyone. He was an island, and she a spectator. On a particularly cold morning, she sat in the empty seat near his. The bus was quieter than usual, and the sound of the tires on the pavement felt like a soft melody filling the space. Laura glanced at him, her heart beating faster than she would have liked to admit. She wanted to speak, but something held her back. What could she say? How could she break that silence? That's when, out of nowhere, the boy looked at her. His eyes were deep, like they were trying to communicate something. But at the same time, there was a sadness in them Laura couldn't quite define. She felt a chill run down her spine. He didn't smile. He didn't make any friendly gesture, but somehow that was enough. With just one look, he had broken the barrier between them. Then something unexpected happened. The boy took out one of his earbuds and softly said, "Do you have any spare change?" It was a simple question, but the way he asked, almost like he was asking for permission to be noticed, touched something inside Laura. She searched her bag, hesitated for a moment, then handed him a few coins. He nodded in thanks and placed the earbud back in. The exchange was brief, but for Laura, that small moment made the world around her feel a little less cold, a little less distant. She didn't know what was happening to her, but she felt a growing need to understand who he really was. His eyes had left a mark on her, one she couldn't explain. As much as the boy seemed lost in his own world, something about him called out to her. There was something there, hidden beneath the surface, and Laura was determined to uncover it. In the days that followed, she searched for him on the bus, but he seemed like a fleeting presence, almost like a shadow that appeared at the most unexpected times. On one ride, she managed to sit near him again. They didn't exchange words, but the silence between them was comfortable, as if a connection had already been made. It was as if he knew she wouldn't judge him, that she wouldn't ask invasive questions. Laura began to notice little details she hadn't seen before, like how he always carried a book but never opened it, how his gaze, though distant, seemed to be watching something far beyond the bus windows. She knew he was carrying something, a secret, an invisible weight he didn't want to share, and she wanted to understand. She wanted to be part of that enigma. Still, something inside Laura warned her that by trying to learn more about him, she might get involved in something far bigger than she could imagine. But as always, she couldn't help herself. Her curiosity and empathy were pulling her into something she didn't yet understand, and it made her feel that maybe, just maybe, this encounter could change her life forever. Chapter 2. Secrets in the Silence. Laura's routine began to shift from the moment the boy on the bus looked at her. Every morning, she felt a growing sense of anticipation for the next ride, hoping he would show up, though she still didn't know his name or anything about his life. His presence had become a constant echo in her thoughts. The silence between them felt deep, something she couldn't ignore. The bus now seemed to carry a different atmosphere whenever she was near him. There was a kind of tension in the air, but not the usual kind from a rushed commute. It felt more intimate, as if simply being in the same space was a form of communication in itself. They didn't speak, but somehow they seemed to understand each other in a quiet way. And Laura knew that silence wasn't empty. It was full of unspoken stories, of secrets waiting to be revealed. One cloudy morning, she decided to take a step forward. She arrived at the bus stop earlier than usual, sitting on the seat closest to the window, hoping to spot him before anyone else. Time dragged on, and she began to wonder if she'd made the right choice. When the bus finally arrived, she saw him. He got on quickly, as always, but paused for a moment when he noticed her, as if trying to decide whether to sit near her. But instead of walking past, he came closer. He sat beside her, not too close, but close enough that she could feel his warmth. Laura's heart began to race. She had never imagined this moment would actually happen, and now here they were, sitting together, sharing that same comfortable silence. But this time, something felt different. The boy, still wearing his serious expression, finally broke the silence. "Do you remember me?" he asked, his voice soft, but filled with something heavier than simple curiosity. Laura didn't know how to answer. She remembered him clearly, but she didn't know what he expected her to say. She could feel that this moment meant something, that there was weight behind his words. She tried to smile, but it came out a bit forced. "Of course, how could I not?" she replied, her voice slightly shaky, surprised at her own boldness for starting a conversation. He looked at her for a moment, as if measuring her response. He seemed like he wanted to say more, but hesitated. Then, turning his gaze to the window, Laura felt him drift away, lost in thoughts she couldn't reach. She watched him quietly, waiting. Then he turned to her again, and what he said next caught her completely off guard. "I'm running away from myself." His words came out like a whisper, almost lost in the background noise of the bus, but to Laura it sounded like a scream. What did he mean by that? Running away from himself? A wave of confusion and compassion swept over her. She wanted to understand, wanted to help, but didn't know how. He then shifted slightly, as if trying to emotionally pull away from the moment. And without another word, he looked down at the floor. Laura felt a sharp sting of rejection, but at the same time an even stronger need to understand the boy who seemed to carry an invisible weight on his shoulders. The bus stopped at the next station, and the boy quickly stood up. Before getting off, he turned to Laura one last time, with a look in his eyes that felt like a silent plea. "Don't look for me," he said, his voice soft again, but firm. "I'm a distraction. It's better this way." Laura sat there frozen, watching him walk out the back door of the bus. Her chest felt tight, and one question echoed in her mind. Why did he say that? She wanted more than ever to understand who he was. But at the same time, the way he pushed her away only made her want to get closer. What was he hiding? And why did he think she was a distraction? She didn't know, but at that moment, the boy's secret had become more intriguing than ever. Chapter 3. The Weight of the Past. Laura was becoming more and more obsessed with the boy on the bus. After their abrupt conversation the day before, she couldn't get him out of her mind. He was present in every thought, and the words he had said, "I'm running away from myself," echoed in her head like a riddle, a key to something bigger, something she couldn't quite understand. The way he had pulled away so suddenly made her feel helpless, like something important was about to be revealed, but just out of reach. In the following days, she looked for him every morning, but the boy had vanished. It was as if he had evaporated from her world, leaving behind nothing but emptiness where he used to be. Laura started feeling anxious, wondering if he had said those things just to push her away, or if there was truly something deeper she wasn't seeing. She had almost given up hope of ever seeing him again, until one morning the bus came to a sudden halt. Traffic was jammed, and Laura looked out the window trying to see what was happening. That's when she saw him. The boy was standing on the sidewalk, staring at the bus with a distant, lost expression. He looked like he was hesitating, like he was battling something inside himself. She wanted to call out to him, but fear of seeming intrusive froze her in place. Then suddenly, as if he had felt the weight of her gaze, he turned. Their eyes met instantly, and in that moment, Laura felt something shift. He began walking toward the bus, and when he stepped on, she noticed something different. His posture was more hunched, as if carrying a heavier burden than before. He looked more tired, more defeated. When he sat next to her, there were no words. The silence between them felt heavier than ever. Laura didn't know how to begin, what to say. But she didn't have to. The boy looked at her, and his eyes were filled with such deep pain it seemed to spill out of him. He was pulling away, but she didn't know where to. It was like he was stuck between wanting to open up and fearing being truly seen. "I'm not who you think I am," he said, breaking the silence again. But this time his words were soaked in exhaustion, as if he was already worn out from fighting himself. Laura said nothing. Just waited, knowing he wasn't ready to share everything yet. But she could feel he was getting closer. She wanted to understand. She wanted to know what made him feel this way, what kept him from being who he wanted to be. He looked at her with a mixture of despair and gratitude. "What did you see in me?" he asked, like he was searching her eyes for something, some kind of hope, some kind of answer. Laura felt her chest tighten, and in that moment, she realized that maybe he didn't need an answer. Maybe all he needed was someone to listen, someone who wouldn't judge him, someone willing to help, even without understanding everything. She didn't know how she could help him, but something inside told her that if he could trust her, she would eventually understand. The problem was, he seemed to be fighting his own demons, and Laura wasn't sure how he could escape the cycle of self-sabotage he was caught in. The bus stopped again, and the boy stood up. Before leaving, he looked at her once more, and this time it was different. His eyes had softened as if the weight of his struggle had lifted just a little. "I'll be back," he said, with a lightness in his voice Laura hadn't heard before, and with that he left, leaving Laura there alone with her doubts and a restless heart. What did "I'll be back" really mean? Would he come back to her, or to the world that seemed to consume him? And what exactly was he trying to escape? Laura didn't know, but she felt the answer was closer than ever, and she was willing to find out, even if it meant facing the very fears and secrets he was trying so hard to hide. She knew the boy on the bus carried something that could change her life in ways she couldn't yet imagine. Was that ending what you expected? Drop a comment and share the biggest lesson this story left you with.